You are now tuned in to your number one radio station.
Sociology student learns the formula. What we take for granted as real is, at least in part, a human product, built from conventions, institutions, and shared meanings. Yet one implication is rarely acknowledged. If reality is socially constructed, then society itself must also be a construction. And if society is a construction, then so are its engines of reproduction, schools, media, laws, rituals. They are not impartial arbiters of truth but part of the loop that generates and stabilizes the very world we take for granted. What emerges from this reflexivity is strange and powerful. Subjective agreements are treated as if they were objective facts. Money, borders, nations, and even the idea of the people gain the appearance of weight, momentum, and permanence. They behave like objects with mass, obeying something like Newton's laws of motion, yet they are made only of belief. This is the physics of faith, a collective inertia that carries fictions forward until they seem immovable. 1. The individual mind in society. To understand why societies operate this way, we must look inside the individual mind. Why do people not only cooperate with collective rules but actually believe them? One answer is cognitive economy. To question every assumption is exhausting. Taking conventions as facts is efficient. A child who accepts that money is valuable saves a lifetime of confusion and arguments. Another answer is social survival. Conformity secures belonging, while dissent risks ridicule, punishment, or exile. Believing what others believe isn't just convenient, it's safe. The process begins with developmental imprinting. Before children can analyze critically, they absorb the world around them as how things are. Later, when contradictions arise, cognitive dissonance kicks in. Once invested in a belief system, rejecting it becomes painful. It is easier to rationalize and double down than to unwind one's worldview. And, perhaps most fundamentally, fantasy offers refuge. A coherent illusion feels safer than chaos. People cling to the stability of a shared myth even when it contradicts critical reason. 2. Cooperation versus belief. At its core, society requires only cooperation. If I agree to drive on the left and you agree to drive on the right, order emerges. Such rules are arbitrary but workable, pragmatic but humble. They acknowledge their own contingency. In practice, however, cooperation is not enough. Societies elevate agreements into metaphysical truths. Driving on the left is no longer just the rule here but the correct way. What begins as a convention hardens into a reality. This shift is subtle but fateful. Cooperative rules can be renegotiated when needed. Believed truths cannot, because they have been sanctified. Dissenters are not seen as pragmatists with different ideas but as heretics, traitors, or lunatics. The consequences are everywhere. Money ceases to be a token of trust and becomes a metaphysical entity. Borders become eternal facts of nature. Nations become timeless essences. Once fantasies are enthroned as reality, they wield coercive power, defended by armies, taught in schools, and internalized in everyday consciousness. Cooperation sustains society. Belief makes it rigid, fanatical, and violent. Belief is the cuckoo in the nest, crowding out lucidity and suppressing alternatives. It adds nothing essential to cooperation, yet it dominates the world. 3. The inertia of faith. When agreements are mistaken for reality, they acquire the properties of physical objects. This is the strange Newtonian quality of society. Reification. Ideas harden into things. A corporation becomes a person. A line on a map becomes a sacred border. Momentum. Once institutions gather trust, they continue to roll forward like boulders. Even discredited ideas persist for generations because belief itself carries them. Gravity. Legitimacy pulls people in. The more people believe, the harder it becomes not to. Like a planet attracting satellites, mass belief warps the space around it. These dynamics are not metaphors alone, they describe how subjective orders gain real-world force. People fight and die for money, flags, and gods because they feel the weight of belief as if it were gravity itself. 4. Who has dared to say this? Some thinkers have glimpsed this terrain, though usually with more caution than clarity. Eric Fromm showed how people escape from freedom by submitting to systems that dominate them. Herbert Marcuse argued that consumer society pacifies critical thought. Stanley Cohen explored how populations collectively deny uncomfortable truths. Thomas Zaz exposed psychiatry's role in enforcing conformity. Michel Foucault traced how power produces truths that people internalize. Jean Baudrillard declared that simulations have replaced reality itself. Robert Anton Wilson spoke of reality tunnels, and Charles Tart of the consensus trance. All of them point, in different ways, to the same unsettling fact: people mistake collective illusions for objective reality. But most wrap the insight in heavy theory or satire, softening the scandal of the claim. Few have said it plainly. 5. Why few will touch it? Why this reticence? Partly because the critique is dangerous. To say that society runs on fantasy is to question the legitimacy of every institution. Universities, governments, and corporations all depend on the same illusions. To challenge them risks professional exile. It is safer to speak in jargon, reification, discursive formations, institutional facts, than to say directly that most people live in fantasy and call it reality. The emperor prefers his nudity described in Latin. 6. Consequences of fantasy-first societies. When societies mistake their conventions for reality, predictable pathologies emerge. Fanaticism. Dissenters are treated as enemies of reality itself. Stagnation. Alternatives are dismissed as unrealistic, even if they are more rational. Manipulation. Leaders weaponize belief inertia, stoking nationalism, markets, or holy wars. Missed opportunity. A society built on lucid cooperation could be fairer, more flexible, and less violent, but fantasy blocks the way. Fantasy-first societies are powerful, but not sane. They are cohesive, but not fair. Their strength lies in their delusion, and their weakness lies there too. 7. Toward a saner society, what would it take to shift from fantasy to lucidity? First, distinguish cooperation from belief. Recognize that rules need not be mistaken for truths to function. Second, teach reflexivity. Society is our creation, not a cosmic fact. This should be obvious, yet it is radical. Third, normalize doubt and play. A healthy society renegotiates its conventions instead of defending them as eternal. Finally, learn to see society as a physics of belief. Its mass is not fixed, it is ours to redistribute. By shifting trust and faith, we can lighten heavy illusions and give weight to saner ones. Conclusion. The physics of belief society is not solid ground. It is a stage play mistaken for geology. Recognizing this does not dissolve society, it liberates it. Cooperation alone is sufficient for social life. Belief in fantasy is surplus, and too often, toxic surplus. If we want a saner, fairer, more peaceful world, we must stop mistaking our fictions for facts. We must stop worshipping the cuckoo in the nest. The weight of belief is real, but it is not inevitable. It is ours to place, and ours to withdraw.